Good morning, everyone. Hope you all enjoyed our Independence Day holiday, capped off by a women's national team win. Welcome to the Newcastle County Emergency Operations Center, also known as the William J. Bell Fusion Center. Every day, this room serves as a focus where agency representatives and stakeholders come together to develop problem-solving solutions to today's challenges in emergency services or providing efficient emergency services. This room also serves as the key meeting place to plan, prepare, and test, and disseminate information on these plans. And when activated as the County Emergency Operations Center, it collectively brings the shared resources, expertise, and actions of the municipal, county, state, and federal governments along with private and nonprofit entities together in a coordinated effort. Special thanks to Senator Carper and his office for asking Newcastle County to host today's event. You will hear from a sampling of agencies that will share key points for citizens to prepare for this upcoming hurricane season. At Newcastle County, we strive to provide our communities in the county with the ability to develop their own culture of preparedness and resiliency through our community emergency response team training and constant outreach events and presentations, along with cable advertising and social media messages. Before hearing remarks from Newcastle County Executive Matt Meyer and the other speakers that will be introduced by each speaker, here is one of our public service announcements that frequently play on the Weather Channel.
Your family's and your neighborhood's safety depend on your ability to be prepared for a disaster. Everything from flooding, severe weather, fire, or chemical spill can happen anywhere. Here are a few tips so that you'll know what to do when disaster strikes. Make an evacuation plan. Have supplies for up to 72 hours. Stay informed and have a generator readily available. For emergency notifications, sign up for the Delaware Emergency Notification System, which can send you text alert and Smart 911. Stay ahead of disasters in Newcastle County.
In addition, I encourage all of you to pick up our Resident Awareness and Emergency Preparedness Guide out on the table, along with the Preparedness Buddy Guide that's out there for access and functional needs in the vulnerable populations. Without further ado, I'll introduce County Executive Matthew Meyer for a few remarks.
Thanks so much, Dave Carpenter. It's good to hear from you today. He's fighting every day to make sure that we are kept safe from all sorts of emergencies, including hurricanes. You know, just a few days ago was July 4th. We celebrate the independence of our nation, the founding of our country. What we don't often talk about is there was not one democracy founded when we started this country. We have three independent democracies. One is the democracy that is our national government. The second is the democracy that is our state government. And the third is the democracy that is our local governments, our municipalities and counties. And in disaster preparedness and when a disaster strikes, it is of the utmost importance that federal, state, and local are all working together in concert to make sure that all of our residents in this county, state, and country are kept safe. And I'm here today with Senator Carper's leadership and FEMA's leadership and the Delaware Emergency Management Agency, their leadership, to say we are collaborating like never before, employing technologies like never before, employing land use policies like never before to make sure that we can do whatever we can to prevent disasters such as hurricanes. And when they hit or if they hit, we are well prepared to respond. Our first responders, the volunteer fire service across this county, the career fire service in the city of Wilmington, our paramedics are out there every single day, including today, responding to emergencies, true heroes 24/7. And of course, when there is a dramatic incident like a hurricane, we are here. We are here to collaborate with FEMA and DEMA and other agencies, the Red Cross, to make sure we are fully prepared. There are some other things we're doing on a regular basis that the taxpayers should be aware of to make sure that we are well prepared. Under Dave Carpenter's leadership, 4 years ago, we started a program where approximately 100 citizens go through a CERT course, an emergency response course, so that we have citizen activists who are prepared to be like first responders in the case of a dramatic incident like a hurricane. In addition, our land use policies and practices have changed such that FEMA, just a few months ago, changed our designation with respect to flood insurance. We're not building in flood zones the way we used to, and that decreased flood insurance for homeowners across our county by 10%. Small things we're doing every single day to make sure we are well prepared. As I said, it is a partnership. Senator Carper is on the front lines in Washington, making sure we have the resources in our country is ready for these disasters. Just a couple weeks ago, along with Vanessa Phillips, my chief administrative officer, we toured DEMA's facility, the Emergency Management Agency. Incredible technologies that are seamless with what we're using at the counties to make sure we are prepared. And without further ado, I wanted to introduce to you one of the leading members of a volunteer fire service here in Newark at the Aetna Company, the head of emergency management for the state of Delaware, A.J. Shaw.
So good morning, everybody, and thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I think both Dave and the county executive touched on a few things. It is a partnership, and it's all year round. So we're here for hurricane season, kicked off a little bit over a month ago. We know that the later part of the season is where the Mid-Atlantic usually acts up, but a few years ago, I think FEMA pushed out a saying that really was, billboard worthy, and it only takes one. So, they always come out with the statistics. Is going to be an average season, under average, additional hurricanes than we've seen annually. But it doesn't matter because we've seen some of the most devastating hurricanes happen or damage done by only one hurricane. And that's what we need residents here to understand. And I'll take it even a step further, lower than that. We've seen a very wet summer. We've seen these pop-up storms over the last 2 months that have caused, significant damage and, hiccups in the night, if you want to put it that way, to people with roads being closed or streets coming down. We had a tornado down in Laurel back in April. So we need the citizens to really prepare themselves, not just for hurricanes, but for things that they could do every day. And there's kind of 3 things that we'll tell them to do is make a plan. So make a plan of what you're going to do. Just the other night, we had a small community that had power outages, and it's 90 degrees inside the buildings. It's going to get hot. Some of those people had medical issues. What are they going to do? So luckily, most of them are able to go over with family or friends. What's going to happen when that happens to your neighborhood? Who could you go with to stay? What happens when the flooding happens and you can't get to your house? So if you could take care of yourself, it's great because it's going to lower that stress level if you have that plan. You also have to make sure you have those phone numbers, that communication plan, because can you charge your phone? Does everybody remember their phone numbers of their relatives anymore if they don't have their phone with them? Simple stuff like that really causes stress to people when these storms happen. Make a kit. We understand that we ask people to do an awfully lot to prepare for disasters and emergencies, and one of them is make a kit to have at least 3 days supplies for you and your family and your pets. However, sometimes that might be challenging for people, so piecemeal it together. Every time you go to the grocery store, pick up a few things, put them in the kit, and in a Rubbermaid thing, put it in the closet. And when you do that, don't forget stuff that you might need for your pets. Don't forget board games or other activities that you could use for your kids, because if the power goes out, that probably means the internet's going out, and we all know that the kids' attention span is going to be even shorter then. Stay informed. The video that Dave showed us when he opened up talked about the Delaware Emergency Notification System. That's one way to receive information if there are torrential systems or evacuations or storms coming in. We'll also be putting stuff on Facebook using our media partners. There are partners here as well to get that information out. You can follow us on Facebook. We're also on Twitter, as well as the Office of Emergency Management for Newcastle County. And we also have a website, preparedde.org, is a collaboration of information from both the Department of Health and Social Services and DEMA and our partners to give you kind of checklists. So if you don't know where to start to prepare for your family or your place of employment, go there. There's some checklists and great ideas to start off. And Dave talked about it quickly, but don't forget about your neighbors. There are people out there that have medical conditions. They might not have transportation. They might not be informed as well as others are. Check on those that might be a little bit more vulnerable. And lastly, but not leastly, don't forget the pets. People don't want to leave their pets, and we don't want somebody staying behind if they're asked to leave because they don't know what they're doing with their pets. So whether it's your dog, cat, birds, whatever, people have a lot of different pets out there, but just make sure you include them in your plan as well. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Mary Ann Tierney, the Regional Administrator for FEMA. Again, one of our partners we work with day in and day out.
Good morning. Thank you for coming here today. I want to thank Director Shaw and Senator Carper for the invite to today's event. Director Shaw did such a great job talking about preparedness. I really have just 2 points that I want to make. The first thing is that you should know your zone your evacuation zone, because we're here talking about hurricane preparedness in particular. So if you live in Delaware, Delaware is a coastal state, it's important to understand where you are in terms of evacuation, what zone you're in. The second thing that I want to point out is that if you are asked to evacuate by state or local officials, you should leave at the time that they ask you to evacuate. Please do not delay your evacuation. You could be stranded and first responders will not be able to reach you. So it's important that you do all of the preparedness work ahead of time and be informed about what's happening in your area if there is a storm approaching. The other thing I want to mention is about insurance, which I'm glad the county executive mentioned. If there is a disaster in Delaware and the federal government is asked to provide assistance, we have different programs available. And a lot of people think that FEMA is going to make you whole after a disaster. When we do provide grants to individuals and families after an event, the average grant that we provide is only $5,000 or less. The average amount of money that you can get by having flood insurance is over $110,000. So FEMA is not going to make you whole after a disaster, and it's important that you take other steps to be financially prepared, and insurance is one of the most important ways that you can be prepared for an event and avoid financial ruin after a disaster. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Senator Carper.
Well, it's not every day I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 warm-up acts, and these are tough acts to follow. We're great to be with you, Dave. Thanks, Matt, our county executive, who I think is doing a great job, put together a great team. We're very proud of the work that you and your team are doing here in Newcastle County. Ken Grant, the real Grant, I told him that my wife rides our exercise bike in our basement. We have a finished basement apartment, and she's got a bike down there, and she just figured out that she's got a new car this weekend, Honda CRV. And as it turns out, I heard on NPR today that the auto manufacturer that sells the most vehicles in America with parts from America, their domestic content, it's not Ford, it's not Chrysler, it's not GM, it's Honda. It is Honda. And anyway, so she's down there yesterday, and she's trying to figure out how to use my boombox down there, so she can. I usually listen to her music, and she likes to listen to books on tape. And right now she's listening to Grant. It's Ron Charles' book on Grant. So I heard your name yesterday about 1,000 times. I am not sick of your name, but it was a good reminder. I said to my wife, I think I knew him. So, but it's great to be with all of you. A couple of things that were said. I just want to follow up on. I don't know if it was Dave or Matt who was mentioned as we're talking about Independence Day, and I hope you all had a great Independence Day. I love 4th of July, and my guess is you do. We do a lot of parades in up and down the state from one end to the other, and it's always fun to do that. Delaware, as it turns out, before we had Independence Day, 4th of July, we had Separation Day. Matt and I were in the Separation Day parade right about the middle of June 15th, June 16th. And that is a commemoration of when Delaware separated from Great Britain, and we also gave Pennsylvania their independence, because for many years we were joined at the hip with Pennsylvania. Thank you to William Penn, and but we gave Pennsylvania their independence and sent them on their way. And about 2 or 3 weeks later, a guy named Caesar Rodney rode his horse from Dover, Delaware, to Philadelphia to cast a tie-breaking vote in favor of the Declaration of Independence. So that's just a little bit of history moment that we start off with. You know, they probably had hurricanes in those days, and they probably had maybe even had tornadoes and all, but they didn't have extreme weather then like we do now. When I was a kid, I wanted to go to college, didn't know how to pay for it, won a Navy ROTC scholarship, went to Ohio State. Very proud of that, and wanted to be in the Navy, and finally ended up back here, got an MBA, and people let me be their state treasurer, congressman, governor, senator. And but when I would walk around the Ohio State campus, one thing I never saw then was a Polar Research Center. And there just wasn't one. And as it turns out, there is one today. They've actually changed the name. But it's founded by a husband and wife research team from West Virginia, where I was born. And what they have done over the last 20, 25 years as leaders of this research institute is they go down to the equator, and they take research teams, and they climb the highest mountains along the equator, and they climb to the top of the highest mountains. And they have equipment that enables them to go to drill into the snow caps, the ice caps on the top of these tall mountains. And by doing that, the deeper they go, the further back in time they go. And what they're trying to do is measure carbon dioxide. And they initially were able to go back like 50,000 years, and then find 100,000 years, 150,000 years. Now they're able to go back 500,000 years or more. And the level of carbon dioxide in our air is higher today, in our atmosphere today, higher than any time in all the years that we've been able to measure. There's a movie, I don't know if anybody ever goes to Theater Inn, but a cool art theater in the Nemours building in Wilmington, Marianne, and they show some usually interesting, cool movies. And they were showing one this weekend that goes back and focuses on the music scene in Laurel Canyon and just outside of LA from the period 65 to 67. And one of the musical groups that they showcased in this movie is called Buffalo Springfield, and which later on led to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. But one of the founding members of Buffalo Springfield was a guy named Stephen Stills, and who had a lot of success in the groups and on his own. He wrote a song that goes something like this: "Something's happening here, just what it is ain't exactly clear." Something's happening here, just what it is ain't exactly clear. Well, something is happening here. Something is happening here. We've had the hottest weather, hottest summers in the last, 10, 15, 20 years of any time in the history of our country. All the years we've been keeping, we've had periods of rain so intense in Ellicott City 2 years ago where they had 2,000-year floods within an 18-month period. Just remember, a 1,000-year flood is something you're supposed to get every 1,000 years. And they got 2 of them within 18 months. We've seen vast flooding in the Midwest. Farmers not able to plant their crops even today and facing great threats. Our son Christopher lives in Northern California, and while we have had a whole lot of rain over here and hard for farmers to plant crops as well, in Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Montana, they have firestorms, wildfires bigger than our state. And more Category 5 hurricanes in the last 3 or 4 years than I think any time in the last 100 years. Something is happening here. And it's important for us to rise up and take on this challenge, have zoning that's smarter, don't allow development and building in places where it frankly doesn't make sense, have a national flood insurance program that actually incentivizes communities and homeowners to build smarter and in a way that's more resilient. We passed a major water infrastructure legislation in the Congress last year, unanimously in the House. I think there was one dissenting vote in the Senate. And one of the things we focused on there is not just. I'll give you an example. Down in Indian River Inlet, you go over the bridge, Indian River Inlet. They have the opportunity to build in our other inland bays, and as sea levels rise, to build more walls. And what we've figured out is actually it makes more sense to use Mother Nature, to rebuild and to harness Mother Nature in order to, like marshes and so forth, to serve as a bumper against the bad weather. Last thing I'll mention is this. John Barrasso, who is the chairman of our Environment and Public Works Committee, I'm a senior Democrat. We're working on major transportation infrastructure legislation now. We hope to, by the end of this month, report a bipartisan bill for surface transportation, roads, highways, bridges across the country, 5-year bill, report out of the committee at the end of this month. This bill is going to be a little different than what we've done in the past because it will focus on resilience. It will focus on building our infrastructure in ways that can not only sustain bigger hits, that are actually built out of materials that can sustain flooding, high temperatures, and so forth. So last thing, I asked Katie Wilson, I said, Katie, if there's any one thing I should emphasize here, she said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Be ready. We had, I think it was Dave who walked through maybe 3 rules that make a lot of sense. And I certainly agree with that. The other thing is, while it's important for us to do those things and to focus on the symptoms of problems, we have to focus on the root causes of these problems. And the reasons why we're getting this, all this crazy weather all over, not just Delaware, not just Delmarva, and not just the United States, not just the East Coast, all over the world. There's a reason why this is happening. And we have to be smart enough to be able to address that at the same time that we prepare and make ourselves safer here on this planet that's been entrusted to us. And I think, Katie, was that pretty much all you wanted me to say? Should I sit down now? If you've been watching carefully, you would have seen Katie's lips move while I was speaking. She would say, Mike, don't forget my key point. So I didn't do that. Thank you all for being a part of this. I just want to say to the folks, especially the folks that are up here and the people that work for you, many thanks for the good that you do with your lives and for all the service you provide for us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. If anybody would like to stay, we will give a tour of the Emergency Operations Center, which obviously is an eyesight tour from this point. this is the room. But we'll also take you next door to the 911 Center. Also, we have Chief Miller here that can go over things with the 911 Center. If anybody's interested in that tour, please let us know afterwards. Thank you. Thank you to Senator Carpenter and Katie for setting this up and their partnership. Thank you very much for all their partners. Thank you.